Hello, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live's Leaf Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 50. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available also on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. I got to tell you, any later than 216, 224 was much smarter, I guess. Now on Leaf Talk, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, Frank. How are you today?
Very good. I am looking forward to this conversation about the Maple Leafs, and we have an opportunity to say, I think, the Leaf team that played against the Panthers is that if you landed, in Toronto from outer space and you were looking at that lineup and you looked at research from the beginning of the year, you would have said to yourself, ooh, that's not really a very good lineup. That won't do in the National Hockey League. And it doesn't. And it did not. And it should be no surprise. What is surprising is that this group of players played as well as they have till now, Aaron. Am I smoking something illegal or something? I don't know.
No, it's all legal now, but at the end of the day, um, let's be honest here. The Leafs have been 7-2-1 when Austin Matthews has been out of the lineup. The Panthers have been 4-6-0 in the past 10 games. These are definitely what looked like a team on its way down being passed by a team on the way up. But you can only play without half of your forward group for so long before it finally starts to wear on you a little bit. It's
and
no surprise.
and and the book starts being made on your lineup as it exists. That's the advantage of being new to the league. There is an advantage to being new in the league. New players have to be figured out by defensive people, right? If they're offensive players, if they're defensemen, offensive people in return. So what you're looking at now is that this is more or less the reality of the inexperience of the players they have being challenged now in the sense that not only do they have to come up with that I'm in the NHL energy again and again and again and again, they also have to, from game to game, I know this sounds maybe a little too much, but they have to reinvent themselves, Aaron, and reinvent themselves in a way that allows them to be successful.
No, for sure. And there is always that advantage to being so new to the league that they don't have a defense for you. It's one of those things that just happens to crop up every
Like a
once in a
pitcher in
while.
baseball, if you've
Yep.
never seen him pitch,
And by the time you're on your third trip through,
uh,
that's usually
you,
when they pull
you
you up
catch up
because
on
that's
him.
when you start to get lit up.
And that's when the pitcher has to adapt
Yeah.
to the change and be flexible in that regard. But that doesn't mean that these players that the Leafs have got are not good, and the only reason they succeeded is because nobody knew who they were. I mean, they played well, and they look good, you know, when you factor in their lack of experience. But now we're going to find out, was this a game that Florida played really well and the Leafs just couldn't keep up with them? Or was this a game where the Leafs' inability to keep up with an NHL team? I'm thinking the latter. I think what we're seeing here is we watched this Leaf team, short manpower, short, playing against a team that had all their stuff together. And they looked really good. Florida looked like the Stanley Cup champ that they were. Their passes were crisp. Their defensive play, they took the man-to-man thing. They had it going, and they had their truculence going as well. There were some instances there where I don't think it was an accident that a goalie ended up almost with a concussion where he went down. It wasn't an accident. And,
No.
and that's all a part of the Florida game, right? That's the way the game is. The tough physical, and these young players, I think, got educated in it. There were a couple of times a couple of the young boys got stood up.
And here's the thing: you look at the lineup that they had the past couple of days. You look at Tavares playing first line center, Pontus Holmberg playing second line center, followed by Fraser Minton and Connor Dewar, and it's like that is not a recipe for success. You know,
Strength down the
Austin
middle, it
Matthews
wasn't.
is day to day. Matty Nyes is day to day. Bobby McMahon is day to day. Ryan Reeves is still suspended.
Oh, go back to Bobby McMahon because that's a new one.
Yeah, he was
That was a Florida thing.
yeah, he was injured in the second period and didn't come back for the rest of the game. This
What
is
happened
also the
to him?
lead. Not sure. They're saying it's a lower body injury. I didn't see anything that indicated that he had been hurt, but I'll take his word for it because obviously I'm not the one that's playing. But you look at all the players that are out for the Leafs, and that is currently 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. That is more than half of their forwards. And everybody says, well, the Leafs should go to 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. At this rate, they may have to because they're running out of forwards.
Yeah, well, the numbers dictate, right?
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, the negative side is injuries affect, your ability to win. And you have to all year. We've talked about this about other teams like Buffalo, Montreal, Ottawa, because they're in the same division, and we talk about them because they're the main focus for the Leafs, who they need to be better than, and for us, since we cover the Leafs, that's what happens. And what we've noticed is that they've had real drops in play for longer periods. And because of that, they find themselves on the outside looking in. Now Buffalo's creeping into the playoff picture, actually. But the point is that the Leafs need to keep winning. They need to keep acquiring points. Right now, they're first in their division, in a division where the big boys, the former big boys, are not playing well enough, or at least to be consistent with first place in this division was higher than the point total the Leafs have at this point, Aaron. The Atlantic Division is underperforming. There's 3 or 4 teams from the other division ahead of all the teams in the Atlantic Division, including Toronto. That wasn't the case. A lot of times it was, either Tampa or Florida or Boston ahead, and in fact ahead enough to be ahead in the league, not just that division. So the Leafs need to play well and get points, because what I'm saying is that first place thing is fool's gold. They're not that far ahead of the teams that aren't in the playoffs, is my point. So they
Yeah.
need to get their stuff together, and thank goodness these young players are playing well up until now. They got to get it back. So they need a bounce back game.
They definitely do, and they'll have that opportunity on Saturday against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they're currently 2 points ahead of. That 5-1 win on Wednesday actually put Florida up 1 point on the Leafs with 2 games in hand. So Florida's played 24 games; they have 29 points. The Leafs have played 22 games and they have 28 points. Their points percentage is higher, but their points total is lower. So we're looking at it's not that tough of a hole to get out of. The Leafs, thanks to the fact that they have 2 games in hand, we probably at the end of the season find themselves closer to, if not ahead of, Florida at this current scoring and winning clip. But yeah, Buffalo's making some noise. Boston, while not having the greatest season, is still in the picture. When it comes to the wild card right now, we're looking at New York and Boston are the 2 teams that could potentially be the wild cards. And New York has said that they're interested in potentially moving Chris Kreider and also potentially moving Jacob Trouba. Chris Kreider is currently dealing with back spasms, so he's not available for the New York Rangers currently. But it does appear that the Atlantic Division is vastly underperforming at this point. So the first place team in the Atlantic Division would actually be the 4th place team in the Metropolitan. So it's
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at I have anyway, my app says that Florida has 27 points.
mine is showing the data as at.
I'm looking because you said that. I'm looking and I'm seeing that they played 24 games, not 23.
Yeah,
So
that's
so my app, it's
a day behind.
The Sportsnet app. So we'll have to call Sportsnet and ask them what the heck's wrong. I'll have to talk to David. David works for Sportsnet and find out what excuse they have for this this atrocity of misleading people. So I apologize for that. I really saw 27. So yeah. So and I checked while you were talking, and I see here the NHL says they have 29 points, and they're a good bet. It also says that Florida won 2 games in a row. So the Toronto game, and then they won the next day as well, and that's what put them up in front.
So that's a situation that we're currently sitting in right now when it comes to that. Yeah, it has been it has finally, this one loss isn't the end of the season. I know a lot of people were upset after they lost 5-1, but at the same time, you have to consider that this team has been playing short man for quite a while. You know,
Absolutely. But you know what?
so
Good teams have to play well with whomever they can put out there. So,
oh, for sure.
but still, the point is taken, and we do understand. I think everybody understands that injuries are a problem, but you got to try as hard as you can, to have a system that insulates the new players when they come in. And I said before, and I'll say it again, even though they lost to Florida, that the system did do a good job of insulating those young players with very little experience, because the system is so basic and simple and not allowing the other team to score. The younger guys, I think that it's easy to teach defense. So it's harder to teach offense. So if you can teach them defense, the fact that they're not really well versed in offense won't hurt them as much. So that's why this system is better, I think, than, let's say, the Leafs of last year would have been. They would have had difficulty because the run and gun, they played the run and gun, and if you don't have the same kind of rifles or the same kind of potential scorers in the lineup, then you have some issues.
Oh, for sure. And unfortunately, the Leafs found themselves on the wrong end of it this time. But you replay that game, 9 times out of 10, Florida does still win, but the Leafs would probably make a better showing of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great idea. All right, let's break for some news. So Chat GPT is being sued by publishers?
Yeah, this is a really interesting development. But a coalition of Canadian news publishers is suing OpenAI for using news content to train its Chat GPT generative artificial intelligence system. This coalition includes the Canadian Press, H.E.R, Globe and Mail, Post Media, and CBC Radio Canada. They said in a joint statement that OpenAI is regularly breaching copyright by scraping large amounts of content from Canadian media. They're saying OpenAI is profiting from that content without permission or compensation to content owners. For those of you who aren't aware, generative AI can create text, images, video, and computer code based on a simple prompt, but the system must first study vast amounts of existing content. This is the first such case in Canada, though numerous lawsuits are underway in the United States, including a case by the New York Times against the OpenAI and Microsoft. So, um, the issue that they're running into here is, again, much like Facebook and Google and others not wanting to pay for news on social media sites, they're just turning it loose on these websites to scrape all the data it possibly can, which is an issue.
May I give a simple man's take on this?
Sure.
Okay, so think of it this way, folks, that computers, as you know at home, how much information you can store on your computer? A lot of data, which is data, right? You can put a lot of data in there. In other words, they can take every article written ever, put it into a computer, and then when somebody asks a question, they use that data to spit out the information. The odd word might be changed, or they pick a sentence from one place, a sentence from another place, and that's what AI does. It takes information that it's given, and then when asked, the algorithm allows it to figure out the answer to the question being asked, or let's say the query being posed. This is the same problem that people in the entertainment business were having. You may or may not remember, folks, when there was the strike, the writers' strike. The same thing. They write a bunch of scripts, and then in those scripts they write what the idea of the script is. Now they have all these scripts, and then somebody asks, can you create a script where 6 single good looking people are together, and and we want to make a hit show out of it? What should it look like? What should the scripts look like? And it goes good, 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 and it spits out Friends. I'm exaggerating, but I'm trying to make a point. So in other words, the information that AI uses is not their own information. They're taking it from everybody else, and then they're resharing it. They're basically taking a word salad and creating a word out of the word salad, which is why I think, Aaron, this long roundabout way, is that I think they have a legitimate complaint. And the same thing with AI when it comes to images. There's going to have to be, I think that eventually what's going to have to happen is there has to be an admission that this is AI. In other words, a picture. You know how you want proprietary pictures, people have the watermark on it because it's their picture, so nobody can use it. I think it's going to have to get to the point that there's a watermark on pictures that say this is AI. Because if it isn't AI, it can't be confused with AI. And eventually that's what's got to happen. And just like, and they might say, well, that's not freedom. I hear this thing about freedom, freedom of the press or freedom of whatever. You don't have a freedom to steal stuff. And just because you can advertise it doesn't mean it can't. Like, for example, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm really sorry, but this is one of the things that bothers me. When people post stuff, when stuff is posted, right? If it's true, if it's not true, if it does damage or it doesn't do damage, they're saying it doesn't matter. You should have the freedom to lie. That's what it came down to in the American election, right? You should have the freedom to lie. Well, I can't sell cigarettes without the warning, the damage it does, without that warning on the package. So why should words that cause damage be allowed to go without any, not censorship, but at least identification? And that's, I think, the next step we're going to have to do. And that goes
Nope.
with the AI thing you're talking about.
I don't disagree. I used to participate in something called NaNoWriMo very frequently, National Novel Writing Month, where the idea was to try to write 1,500 words a day during the month of November to try to get yourself up to around 50,000 words to create your own novel.
Wow.
But I haven't participated this year, mainly because they're like, well, we're going to be training an AI program as well. So any of the information that you submit to us is now going to become our intellectual property, which we're going to use to train AI. And a lot of people decided not to participate this year because they want to retain ownership of their own words. They don't want it used to train something else.
Isn't that an admission of what they're doing is wrong? That they're
100%.
taking something by them, because the same thing Facebook does. We get all these messages where Facebook is saying, any picture you have now belongs to us. Well, that was never the intention of when I post a picture on Facebook. I'm posting it as something that I'm sharing with people, friends, family.
Yeah.
That's who I'm posting it for. I'm not posting it for possibilities for sale. And if it was, I have a right to take part in the money that it generates. And that should be without saying it. It's just another way of people taking what isn't theirs. And unfortunately, we live in a world today, Aaron, where I think things are upside down. When I was younger, it was like honesty, while it wasn't 100%, for the most part mattered. Now it's the reverse. Now, because we're so used to dishonesty being acceptable, honesty is irrelevant. Just like we made lies irrelevant before, now we're making the truth irrelevant, and it's sad. It's truly sad. And
It's
that's
genuinely frustrating.
Yeah, and so when they produce something on an AI to suggest it's theirs, right, is crazy. And I really don't like the idea of them doing the writing. I love writing. I love using my own words. I mean, I research and find stuff when I'm writing something. I look for research, but I don't copy, paste, and click. Right? I read what the research is and then put it in my own words. And I think that's a lost art today. And it fits in well with, basically newspapers dying and the printed word becoming less and less relevant. It's just crazy. It's the world we're moving into.
100%.
I find myself lost, but that's part of being old. Prime Minister Trudeau adds 7.1 million to PEI school food program.
Yeah, so this was something that was expected. He traveled to public schools in Eastern PEI last Friday, where he announced $7.1 million in federal support over 3 years for PEI's school food program. This is from Ottawa's $1 billion 5-year Universal National School Food Program that was promised during the 2021 election campaign and announced as part of the 2024 budget. PEI is the fourth province to sign on to the program, joining Newfoundland and Labrador, Manitoba, and Ontario. This is important because it's direct financial help during a time when people are being squeezed because of the high cost of living. Um, the funding would add to the island's existing school food programs, providing thousands more breakfasts and snacks to students. There are two streams in PEI currently. There's a free breakfast and snack program that's been operating since 2008, and a pay-as-you-can lunch program which has been serving meals since 2024. During the 23 and 24 school year, the program served about 23,000 students. So you can see the $7.1 million injection is vital to making sure that this continues.
Well, children eating when they're young leads to good health when they're older. Let's go over to the second period and talk about the Maple Leafs and how they need a center. And apparently, Aaron, you're hearing the Islanders' Brock Nelson might be a good fit. What?
Yeah, he very well could be a fit based on the fact that Matthews is going to be soon on his 10th potentially day out. And you know the centers behind Tavares are Hornborg, Minton, and Connor Dewar. Um, you know, Brock Nelson might not necessarily be a bad fit. Um, there is no deal that's currently imminent. I want that to be understood here. But Nelson could bring his scoring touch and size as an impact rental. Um, Nelson has produced at least 34 goals on an offensively challenged Islanders team in the past 3 seasons. With 8 goals in 22 games so far this season, he's now on a 30-goal pace. His current shooting percentage of 11.4% is below his career average of 14.2, which means that he can progress to the mean. Um, Domi, unfortunately, wasn't effective enough as center at the third line before he was injured. And while the Leafs do continue to win games thanks to Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, a lack of depth down the middle whenever a center gets hurt is a cause for concern come playoff time. Now, Nelson eats up about 19 minutes of ice time on average. The ideal amount of minutes the Buds would give him on a second line, and maybe a bit less if he centered the third. But that's exactly 30 goals in a year is exactly the sort of production that the Maple Leafs are looking for.
No,
So,
it always comes down to money.
yep.
Well, the when we look at the Leafs and the fact that they're missing half their players, I think was Marner's quote, supported by the coach soon after, that maybe they're starting to feel. We sort of asked backwards here. The first story should have been the second story. The second story should have said
Yeah.
the first story. But anyway, this is the lead. Anyway, we buried the lead. The lead is the Leafs are playing undermanned, and they know it and they're feeling it. And I think that's an issue in itself. That speaks to a lack of confidence, a crack of it showing up.
No, it's true. And the problem is it's really frustrating because with as many injuries as the Leafs have had and the number of players that are cycling through the lineup, it's very hard to get any consistency and familiarity. And that is one of the things that are a hallmark of a good hockey team is how familiar your players are with each other. And you know, that obviously makes it a lot easier to score. Um, Now, uh, in addition to Matthews, who's missed 9 games with an upper body injury, there's also Matty Nyes, who took that huge hit from Zach Whitecloud. There's Max Domi, who has a lower body injury. Max Pacioretty has a lower body injury as well, which is purportedly the hamstring. David Camp has a bruise on his leg that refuses to heal. Um, Ryan Reeves is the one exception, I think, to all of this in that he's still serving out his suspension and won't be back until December. But yeah, now Bobby McMahon is now dealing with a lower body injury that was supposed to have been reevaluated yesterday, but I haven't seen any reporting on. So I'm not, he's still listed as day to day on Daily Faceoff as part of their line combinations, but we haven't seen any. I haven't seen anything else on that.
We've talked about Marner and the contract that he needs to have, but now let's bring John Tavares into that same situation. The Leafs are thinking 5. They're thinking up to 7. The Leafs are thinking closer to 5. 6 is in the middle. I don't know, Aaron. Is this guy worth $6 million a year? He's projected this year to be a 30-goal scorer. And to get a 30-goal scorer, you're going to have to pay something for it. And they've got it in John Tavares. And do they believe that he can do that again in the life of, let's say, a 2 or 3 year contract?
I mean, the hope is obviously that he does continue to maintain this level of performance. I think, realistically speaking, even with the cap being rumored to go up to $95 to $97 million per year, call it 96, with the fact that they still have to factor in certain other players who are due for contract renewal, as well as sign some other players. Might actually be better if he were to take less. I don't know if I understand John has made a generational wealth playing hockey. His last contract has basically set him up for the rest of his life, should he so choose. At this point here, about the only thing that could potentially change that is the fact that he still hasn't won a cup yet. And I think he might take a little bit less to continue to try to pursue it with the Maple Leafs. And if not less, then there is the possibility that the Leafs could work around the cap by deferring some of his salary, which is an interesting option.
Yeah, well, what they can defer legally that the league will not reject, right? So there's been some issue that, and I think this the subheading here, the story behind the story for me is that John Tavares has never been known as a swift skater, right? I mean, even in his best years, speed was not what he had. And the first thing people say about player when they start losing traction on their game, it's they don't skate as fast. They lose a step, right? How he's kept his scoring level where it is a testament to how he's adjusted his game, because he was a guy who couldn't afford to lose a step as far as I can tell, but he's magically turned his lack of speed less of a hindrance to him being a good goal scorer. And I must admit, the easy answer is, well, if you're standing in front of the net or in the slot and that's how you score most of your goals, then yeah, the question becomes, how good is he 5-on-5? And I think that's ultimately, Aaron, in my opinion, what's going to determine how much he earns. Because I'm not saying you can put anybody on the power play, but when you have as many guys on your team already that you could put on the power play and you can't say no to, right? Right now, there was before this little moment here, these past couple of weeks, there's nobody you would have thought of on the power play, right? They were all the people that were there. Yeah, those are the ones that got to be there. But the last couple of weeks, we've started to see an influx because of the injuries, I admit, but we've seen an influx of players who weren't normally on the power play. And now the question is, if they have success the way Tavares has success, if it lasts this long, that makes it harder for the Tavares side to sell, right? Because 5-on-5, the guy who's out has the most 5-on-5 goals since Austin Matthews went out, McMahon. He had 3 5-on-5 goals. Nobody has more. And now he's out of the lineup. And the problem with the Leafs has been 5-on-5. And the reason it's a problem is when the power play or the penalty killing doesn't do well, there's no other area for them to improve their chances in the game.
No, that's very true, and they find themselves in a very difficult situation right now. So, I'm not sure what the best road forward is here.
I think it's hit and miss.
Yeah.
The coach has to basically, he's not in some cases, coaches turn on the blender. Well, in this case, he's been handed a blender. So,
Yeah.
he's doing the best he can with what's in the blender, right? So, the Leafs the Leafs are not a team in trouble yet. But as we said earlier, them being in first or second at this point in the position they are doesn't put them that far ahead of the teams who aren't in the playoffs. So they can't afford to slip anymore, and somehow they've got to figure out a way for the injuries to slow down and or stop, because they can't afford this to become protracted, Aaron. Because if this kind of lineup, they truck it out for a while, like up until Christmas, by Christmas they could be not in the playoffs, and that wouldn't surprise me.
No, and it is entirely possible for them to tumble that far down the standings. And again, it's a function of the injuries and how quickly players can come back, and if Reeves is going to be ready to go after his 5-game break, and all of
Did you ever think
all of
Reeves
these
was the
things.
guy you were waiting to come back? Did you ever think that would be
Not 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 to. I'm having
not
obviously a little bit of
you know
fun with
what?
it.
I'll help you. Not before this year, because he's
Well,
played a lot better this year.
he has been a heck of a lot better this year.
So
Um, I'm they have basically a shutdown line in Kampf, Pacioretty, and Domi that is currently out.
when healthy,
Yeah, when healthy, they're a great shutdown line. Matty Nyes is perfect on the left hand side with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner up front. As opposed to, and no offense to whoever they've been slotting in there, but that Matthews, Marner, and Nyes on the front line is absolute dynamite. You put Nylander back with Tavares and somebody else, and you're looking at another great line.
yeah. How
And,
long?
and again, it's how long it takes to get all these guys back.
Well, we'll see.
Yep.
It's a tough situation for the Leafs. Um, so John Tavares, we started this conversation, is looking for a new contract. We've explained what we think he has to do. He has to play well 5-on-5. Let's move over now to the PWHL, and let's talk about Markowski and McMahon.
So these were a couple of draft picks over the past year. Mike Hirschfeld and the Ottawa Charge have basically now whittled their roster down to 23 players, and their focus is now shifted to their November 30th season opener against the Montreal Victoire at Place Belle. Um, Forward Audrey Ann Villette, defender Madeline Weddington, and goaltender Ailey Lehman were placed on waivers November 27th. None were claimed, and Wetherington returned to Ottawa's protected list since he was drafted by the Charge in the summer. Draft picks Manon McNann and Stephanie Markowski each signed 1-year contracts, while training camp invitees Jessica Adelson, Taylor House, and Sam Isbell were signed as reserves. Uh, Markowski McMahon played extremely well in the 2 preseason games Ottawa played last week, and it certainly nudged them in the right direction. In those 2 games, Markowski recorded a goal and 2 assists, while McMahon notched a goal. Um, you know, these younger players that are coming in and making as much of an impact on team management as they are bodes well for the PWHL. I'm not saying that they're going to be able to get to 12 teams or even 18 teams anytime soon, but the fact that there are so many players in there of that caliber to elevate the teams makes the play that much better. The unfortunate thing is a lot of the teams will end up having road heavy schedules, just because they aren't necessarily able to secure all the ice time that they particularly would need in their new homes. But as it currently stands, those 2 players, Markowski and McMahon, definitely look they could be big contributing factors to the Ottawa Chargers season.
Yeah, it's something. Well, you know the way it works, right? Once they have too many players for the amount of teams they have, in other words, when they have so many players that they have more than the lineup, the temptation, depending on how many extra players each team has, will
Mm-hmm.
trigger maybe the expansion of a team or two. But it won't surprise me. I mean, it won't surprise me in the sense that women's hockey is becoming very popular, and and a lot of girls are playing hockey, and it's just a question of the amount of girls that want to play hockey, that the percentile of great players, grows as the growth of the game does, right? They go hand in hand. So
Yeah.
the more girls that play, the more women there is to play in the PWHL, and wish them a lot of luck. I'll tell you one thing for sure. The play has been monumentally improved. It's discernible, which is kind of a terrible thing. You don't want, like, it's you got to be careful how you say this. You say the PWHL, the talent in that has improved, the games have improved. Are you saying we were bad before? you know, it's,
Look, I'm not saying you were bad before. I'm saying you're better now.
you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
You always got to
100%.
be careful because it's that. Anyway, so let's go to the Bears, and Coach Eberfluss is no longer flustered. He's gone. The Bears. Oh my gosh.
They have not had a good season. Um, Eberflus, his first season ended with a 3-14 record. The following season started just as bad with a 2-7. But yeah, the 2024 season didn't start that poorly. They went 4-2 at the bye. Though playing weaker opponents definitely helped. But after the bye, it got ugly. Williams started to regress. The Bears lost to the Washington Commanders on a Hail Mary, which came after the Bears gave up just enough yards to get Washington in range for a long throw. A couple weeks later, the Bears were in a position to beat the Green Bay Packers, but settled for a 46-yard field goal attempt that was blocked. Um, the Packers said that they knew Cairo Santos had a low trajectory on his kicks, which gave them a shot at blocking the last attempt. Then there was an overtime loss to the Minnesota Vikings. And then there was the final straw, which was against the Detroit Lions, where the Bears let about 25 seconds run off the clock instead of calling a timeout in a 23-20 loss to the Lions.
Wow.
That's when they finally decided that they were going to pull the plug on the Eberflus era. Um, I mean, the Bears have missed the playoffs 12 of the past 14 seasons. They haven't won a playoff game since the end of the 2010 season. But the roster's okay. It doesn't look bad. There are just some weird decisions that are being made.
Yeah,
So
terrible decisions, really.
yeah,
And that's the way it goes. Let's go to hockey once again, and we'll go with the Habs. And Suzuki scored in overtime to give the Habs a 4-3 win over the Blue Jackets.
yeah. There's a little bit of irony there, but also kind of a little bit of kismet. Suzuki changed his jersey number to 13 in honor of Johnny Gaudreau after the untimely death of the Gaudreau brothers at the start of the season. But he also scored 44 seconds into overtime as the the Canadians beat the Blue Jackets 4-3, snapping a 2-game losing streak. Juraj Slavkovsky also had a goal and an assist. Cole Caulfield added a power play goal, and Emilio Heinemann also scored. Caden Primo made 21 saves for Montreal. Mathieu Olivier and Yegor Shinkov scored for Columbus. Zach Werenski had a Gordie Howe hat trick with a goal, an assist, and a fight, and Elvis Merzlikin made 19 saves. Now, despite playing the second game of a back-to-back on the road, the Habs actually skated hard and rallied when they needed to before securing the win in overtime. Columbus, unfortunately, squandered the lead twice as their 3-game winning streak ended.
And you have Gaudette of the Senators scores go-ahead goal as Sens beat the Sharks. The Sharks only allowed 11 shots to lose that game.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on in San Jose, man. It's one of those weird things. But yeah, Gaudette had 2 goals, including a late go-ahead score. Linus Ullmark made 36 saves. Gaudette tipped a pass by Stützle past Mackenzie Blackwood with 4:12 left for his 4th goal in as many games. Stützle's assist was his 3rd point of the game. Ottawa scored twice on its first 3 shots to lead 2-0 after 1 period. I'm really not sure what's going on here for San Jose. The San Jose outshot the Senators 39-11. But Ullmark played well. He's now 6-0 in his career against San Jose. After losing his last 4 starts, I'm glad he finally managed to pull one out here. Gaudette was actually recently moved to the top line and has 11 goals on 31 shots this season, which is a shooting percentage that's a little bit over the norm. He's second in the league behind Alex Ovechkin in goals per 60 minutes at 2.61. So that was interesting.
Former coach Guy Boucher of the Senators has a job.
Yeah, this one is more of just a sort of an interesting thing for me. I always like to try to catch where former coaches go. Some obviously returned right back to the NHL pool within minutes, or in some cases hours. In this particular case here, Guy Boucher is heading for Russia. He's been hired to be the new bench boss for Avangard Omsk of the KHL. He signed for the rest of this season and next, taking over a team that's currently third in the Chemyshev division with a record of 13-16.
And good luck to him. Lucas Raymond scores an OT as Red Wings beat the Flames 2-1.
So yeah, this was a nice little one for Lucas Raymond. He got a power play goal at 3:35 of overtime. Alex DeBrincat scored a first period power play goal and also assisted on Raymond's game winner for Detroit. Cam Talbot made 24 saves in the Red Wings' third win in 4 games. Connor Azari's power play goal with 2:48 remaining tied the score, and Dan Vladar made 25 saves for Calgary, who have lost 2 straight following a 4-game winning streak. Calgary went 1 for 4 on the power play to move to 6 for 15 over the last 4 games.
Not bad.
They only had 2 shots on goal during the first 3 power plays before managing 3 during the 4th one, which was capped by Zari's goal. The defense for Detroit has actually been a lot tighter since allowing 15 goals during 3 losses on a West Coast road trip. The Red Wings have actually only allowed 6 goals over the last 4 games, as evidenced by the fact that they held Calgary to 1. So yeah, this is shaping up to be interesting. Calgary started off hot, so did Winnipeg. They're both doing not as bad as expected. You know, certainly the floor hasn't fallen out for either of these teams.
Yeah, no kidding. The Canucks, they couldn't pull off a comeback. They tried, almost did, but lost to a team that needed a win more than a lot of teams right now. The Penguins won 5-4.
Yeah, they couldn't find the equalizer late, unfortunately. I mean, Atu Rati, Pius Suter, Quinn Hughes, and Elias Pettersson provided the offense. Artur Silov stopped 18 of the 23 shots that he faced. This is actually the first loss on the road by the Canucks since October 15th, snapping an 8-game win streak away from Rogers Arena. Silovs did not start well. As much as he put in a dynamite performance in the playoffs, he allowed 4 goals on the first 10 shots. So you know, he eventually settled in, but the score was already 5-1, and Vancouver needed to pull off a remarkable comeback just to secure a point. With a record of 1-4-1, while posting a save percentage above 900 in just 1 start, it may actually be in the Canucks' best interest to send him down to Abbotsford for a few games just to help him get his head right, let him settle in a bit, and get things figured out. But this is actually the 3rd time the Canucks have allowed 4 goals in the first period, which is something that they definitely need to address.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about the Rangers, and you've got Chris Kreider remains out of the lineup. You know what I don't like about this is that they're allowing, the GM is talking about trading Kreider while he's injured.
Mm.
You know, I don't know how that feels for a player. I don't know how it feels for a team, but I know how it feels for a fan. That seems kind of cheap shottish. You know, the guy can't even show that he's a valued player. He's sitting there injured, and he's being told he's going to be traded, and then, or they want to trade him, and then what about the other team, that the teams that, like, it just doesn't make it seems counterintuitive to me to suggest we'd like to trade this guy. Oh, he's injured. I mean, really?
It's like, why you're just trying to, what are you trying to sell us here? You know, what
I
sort
think
of
it's
what
a
sort of things are you
message
trying to get
they're
rid of?
sending to the team. I think it's a
Yeah.
message. This is one of those times, you know, every so often you'll end up with an organization that feels they have the ability to criticize a star or stars, right? They believe, we saw it in Minnesota. Remember in Minnesota how the owner there personally attacked the big contract guys he had. And this is a bit of that. It's you know, I think it's a message more to the team than it is to the player, because as I said, common sense tells me if you're going to talk about trading a player, you don't talk about one while he's injured. Just, to me, it just
No,
seems counterintuitive.
no, that just seems a
Gilding
little
the lily,
harsh.
really.
I can understand why they're talking about moving players, though. I mean, they have
Yeah,
lost 5 in a row.
I
That's
I get it. I'm with you, Aaron,
I
and I think we all agree that, when your team starts to fail the way the Rangers have failed, whom, by the way, are losing not just 1-0. So it's not like the
no.
goalie's been perfect. This is the guy that they, high salary, they brought in, and he's not stealing games right now. Are they games that he can steal? That's the debate, right? Is it his fault? Is it not his fault?
Yeah.
Is he playing like the highest paid goaltender in the National Hockey League? That's the primary question. The answer to that has to be there have to be games that he steals. We've seen that from great goaltenders in time. It isn't happening here for the Rangers. And maybe they're intentionally doing this because they're trying to not put pressure on other players. And these guys, they think they can take it. I know Kreider's that kind of guy. Kreider's a pretty tough egg, and it wasn't just him, right? That they were talking about trading.
No, I mean, they were talking about trading their captain, Jacob Trouba. Those
Absolutely.
are 2 players that were mentioned specifically,
Absolutely.
for that sort of thing. Um, I honestly haven't heard of any other players at this point really having their names tossed around for getting moved. But I mean, when the discussion here is, I mean, Panarin actually was another one of the names that was mentioned. Kreider
Yep.
has 9 goals and 0 assists in 19 games so far this season. Trouba, as a defenseman, only has 6 assists, 17 penalty minutes. You got to look at things like that.
Well, Truba's
Um,
contribution is less about scoring assists,
mhm,
about his physical play. That's what he's
oh, for
known
sure.
for, right? That's what he does. And if they don't think he's playing well enough, that'd be what they'd have to complain about, because you can't complain about a guy who isn't really a scorer, not scoring, but you can complain about a guy who's a hitter who isn't hitting. If they're not playing to their strength, then that makes them expendable. With the Leafs, expendability. See, we're at a point with Toronto, because if we can go back to Toronto, because I want to approach this from this direction. Um, it seems to me with the injuries, the talk about contracts, I think is less relevant now, because at this point, you know, the writers have more to write about than the contracts, right? There's news out there they can talk about, speculation about whether, you know, I'm talking about the big contract, Marner, right? Whether you keep him, but looking at a guy like Tavares, the conversation is now turning to him, but that's about it. This team goaltending is something that has been a positive. I don't know which one of them I would. That's what I'd like to talk about. I don't care about the injuries. I don't care about the trades. I want to talk about the goaltenders, and they're looking like they can consistently play this well. And now that Wall is healthy, he's looked pretty good too. You know, the Calgary game notwithstanding. Sorry,
Well,
not the Calgary game, the Florida game notwithstanding.
here's the thing. Wall and Stolarz. Wall has a 922 save percentage. Stolarz has a 921 save percentage. They're both playing well above the average. I mean, about the only thing that I can think of is that they're averaging almost 35 shots a game, and that's just not sustainable for a goaltender. Like, the Leafs need to do they need to do something about the defense. B, they need to do something about secondary scoring, because I mean, Marner's has 9 goals and 20 assists. Nylander has 14 goals and 10 assists. Tavares has 9 goals and 11 assists. And then there's a big drop off to the next player, which is Morgan Riley, who has 4 goals and 9 assists, followed by Matty Nyes at 8 and 4. Outside of Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, there's very little scoring. And that
We talked
is
about
going
the
to be an issue. The
5-on-5.
longer the season goes with these other backup characters, is going to bite them.
And when you have star players who are supposed to be some of the best players in the league, you would think that 5-on-5 would be something that they could, the productivity there would be okay. The next question I wanted to raise is: do you have any idea at this point who can be the goaltender for Team Canada?
See, that's a very good question.
Ouch.
Yeah. There's not a lot out there, unfortunately, and I think
No.
that's what's killing me.
I'm worried about the Team Canada version not having the goaltending to keep up with the other teams. Like, basically, losing 1-0 and 2-1.
All I can say is for the Four Nations Cup, the United States looks like the dominant team.
Oh my goodness, goaltending alone.
Yeah.
They've got 3 goaltenders I think they could put in. They've got some flyers too that they can put in, not Philadelphia. I mean, goaltenders like Stolarz. There's goaltenders like him who are really playing well, who normally weren't in the picture. They've got a few flyers they can take, right? And I'm wondering for Team Canada, it's down to Biddington. You know,
Skinner, Tristan
Skinner.
Jarry.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned two goaltenders that have been three really that have been very inconsistent, and the one that's played better is Biddington, which means he has the inside track. They're not like they don't have the same cachet as the American goaltenders is what I'll say. I'll say
I
that I'll feed you back and say they don't have the same cachet as the goaltenders the Americans have, or the Russians for that. Well, the Russians aren't playing. Let's say the Finns and the Swedes. The Swedes now, Swedish goaltenders have improved. It used to be the Finns a couple of years ago. You know,
my thinking on this is they give one last kick at the can to Marc-Andre Fleury and Jake Allen. Bring those two.
Jake Allen is a dark horse, and Fleury, I think, Aaron, the reason he's a good pick, why I would agree with you, because of his experience.
100%.
And that would be, maybe he's not playing that well, but he wouldn't be demurred by the event, which is the most used word the dictionary has determined that demurred is the most popular word from last year. So no, that's a great thing. They have a great opportunity. Guys like Marner who are trying to get new contracts and/or trying to play. What player doesn't want to play in that tournament, Aaron? Who doesn't
Right,
want to?
seriously.
Right,
I can't think of one that would turn it down.
right. That's going to be a fun tournament. Yeah, I mean, just watching Marner up against Austin Matthews if Matthews is healthy, that'd be interesting in itself. And there are a lot of players like that because teams have Americans and Canadians on the team, and watching those American players play against the Canadian players, and then you've got the Swedish players and of course the Finnish players. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it, Aaron. It's a nice break from the All-Star game. It's not that I don't like the challenges that the All-Star game show us, but this is fun. This is a fun event, in my opinion, for the fans.
For sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Aaron, for doing this. I appreciate it.
Hey, always happy to.
For Aaron William, Freeland, I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Leaf Talk, seen live Fridays at 6 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Leaf Talk, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy your hockey.